4395.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Good evening, Johnson County. Welcome to this week's episode of the Texas Transparency Project. The Texas Transparency Project airs most Thursdays at 5 p.m. here exclusively on JoCo Community Radio. JoCo Community Radio focuses on all the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. JoCo Community Radio has many shows and airs 24 hours a day. You can visit the JoCo Community Radio Facebook page to watch shows live or to see replays. Also, you can go to www.jococommunityradio.com, where Apple and Android apps are available. Tune in to get the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. And we're going to have a very short intro today. We have two guests today. We have the Honorable Troy Fuller running for Constable Precinct 4, and we will have Mr. Timothy Good running for Johnson County District Attorney at the halfway point on to close the show out today. We're following a large town hall event at Lone Star Patriots Group, where a lot of the shows here at JoCo Community Radio are having candidates on to try to help the voters make a decision in this very important primary election. And we're only blessed to have the Honorable Troy Fuller for half of a show, and we're going to get right into it. Constable Fuller, the election, how's it going? We got tomorrow is the last day of early voting. We're going to hit March 5th, and we're off and running. What do you think? How's it feeling?
It's coming at us fast and furious for sure.
It comes quick.
I tell you, Greg, I've met a lot of good people out there. I've gained a lot of support. So I've got people calling me for signs and everything. So I feel really good about, where we're at and where we're going. And it's kind of at a point now where it's in God's hands. The voters, being a military guy, I kind of spent my whole adult life in the service and wanting people to have the right to choose. And, just like you said, I just urge people to get out there and educate yourself on the people that you're voting for and make sure you know who they are and what they stand for, and make sure that it matches, what your beliefs are.
Absolutely. And you bring up military and voting, and I served and I'm blessed to live in a great state of Texas that supports veterans, and I'm consistently thanked for my service here. And I always try to say, thank me by going out and exercising the rights that veterans and that veterans work so hard for you to preserve. And voting is one of the easiest ones, but you gotta educate yourself. You gotta learn the issues. I wish you luck in your race.
Thank you.
I've seen you at quite a few events. I go to all over Johnson County, and I think you're a very solid representation of a great law enforcement man and a great servant to the community. And no matter how it turns out, Johnson County and beyond owes you a great debt of gratitude.
Correct.
And I personally thank you.
I greatly appreciate that.
So let's talk about just for those that are just getting into the research a little bit late. Let's talk a little bit about your law enforcement experience. You've served at quite a few places, and now you're at the constable's office. So let's walk us through that.
Okay. Well, I mean, I began my law enforcement career 40 years ago. I started out in the military. I joke around and say I went to join the Marines, and my brother talked to the guy and says, no, he's joining the Air Force. So that's why I'm an Air Force veteran. I'm very proud of that. And I started my career there, and I was a law enforcement specialist. From there, I went ahead and got my certification while I was in the military early in my time. And then I began working part-time as a paid police officer, and then continued my career in Florida after I got out of the military. And then from there, I came back home to Texas. Been back home, been living here in Johnson County for the last 31 years, but 30 of those years has been in Precinct 4, where I'm the constable. I spent 26 years at the sheriff's office. There I served primarily as a commander over criminal investigations and pretty much all the service divisions. So everything except patrol and dispatch fell under my command. And it is a great honor to work there for as long as I did. I worked under 3 sheriffs, Martin Griffith, Bob Alford, and of course, Sheriff Adam King. In 2020, I was elected to be the constable of Precinct 4, and that's where I've been serving.
So Precinct 4 for a lot of those, I know I'm getting a lot of feedback. People are going in and they might be familiar with 1 or 2 or 3 of the of what's on the ballot. And then they see a ballot with a whole bunch of options on here, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know so much was on here." So for individuals that might be going out to vote, where is Precinct 4? What cities, towns, areas, what footprint does that entail, sir?
I mean, Precinct 4 covers 219 square miles or road miles of Johnson County. It literally runs from Venus to Cleburne. So if you're in kind of the eastern side of Cleburne, a lot of that's going to be Precinct 4. It runs all the way to the county line, but back east of 171. It runs all the way to Grandview, all of Keene, all of Grandview, all of Alvarado, with the exception of one street that comes in, and it would be back south of 67, all of Venus, south of 67, and then it runs all the way down in and around Burleson, up around John Jones, up to Joshua. I mean, we touch everything in Johnson County with the exception of Godley and Maria Vista.
Fair enough. So, so if you're leaning for voting for something else, and you happen to see the Honorable Troy Fuller, he's one of the options here, and we can learn about him today. So your extensive law enforcement experience, most of it was with the sheriff's department.
Yes.
And Johnson County has exponentially grown recently. It went from a really small, quiet, farming, agricultural community to now a pretty much bustling little, soon to be a suburb, maybe, and on the fast track. So, how do you how have you watched it grow, and what are your thoughts on the growth and how law enforcement has changed and how you've adapted with that, and how do you feel prepared to take Johnson County into this big future as we move forward?
Well, I mean, a great example is on the way here. I can remember back in in '94 that there were like 3 traffic lights, maybe 4, between Cleburne and Burleson. And now I was kidding around. It's, maybe like 25 of them, it seems like. So, I mean, the roadways, I mean, it used to be there's been so much growth. A lot of areas that used to patrol, now you're seeing residential areas going up, and all kinds of new business and trade coming into Johnson County. And I've been really blessed over the years because I've had the opportunity to be part of that growth, and to, as far as the challenges of how we enforce things, and roadways that it came in, I've had the opportunity to sit on committees and be part of conversations and how we were going to address that. Right now in Johnson County, over the last 2 or 3 years, we started a leadership group for law enforcement, and basically that's made up of all the chiefs of police and the sheriff and some of the administrative staff that serves with them, and the constables. And it's been a great opportunity because we come together as a consortium, and we get to share the things that we're experiencing, as far as the law enforcement and the community and different things. Or we've talked about hiring, and some agencies, we went through a dire time and still really not quite through it yet, of being short on law enforcement officers. And it's things that we try to help each other, so we work as a team. And this is not a new concept. Like I said, it's been around for 3 or 4 years, but through this program, we as law enforcement executives are coming together. We're meeting, and we're talking about issues, and we're finding solutions together as a team. And I'm a huge believer in teamwork, all the way since my military days. I don't try to lead from the back. I try to lead from the front, and that's the way I do. I think if you empower people, they just do a better job.
And it's great you talk about leading from the front. I know some of the constables in your office, and they speak exceptionally high about you. And that's a testament to the job you've done. I spent time in the courthouse, doing this radio show. I go to a lot of municipalities, a lot of different places, and you're spoken very highly of with your constables, and that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I'm sure proud of that.
And it's great to hear that you guys are doing that collaborative effort. I can't stand limiting talent pool, and you watch this with a lot of like you don't live close enough here, you shouldn't even comment on anything here. You don't do that, you're not involved with here, you shouldn't comment. And watching Johnson County grow, there's a lot of that collaborative stuff going on there. There's a master plan with a lot of the communities now where they're not working independently. So I'm glad to hear that you're a part of not limiting talent pool and bringing in extra people from not necessarily just Precinct 4 trying to work together. That's a testament to a visionary outlook, and that's really good to hear. And another thing that I want to personally thank you for, with being able to foresee growth, is this environmental crime section, and this has recently really hit the ground running. For most of the history of Texas, Johnson County has been pretty much underdeveloped and hasn't had a lot of people living in it. It's been kind of the wild, wild west. And with the massive influx of people, you begin to worry about, and you begin to say, hey, let's make sure that this everything is safe. Everything is copacetic for rural farmland to be turned into basically vibrant communities, and master plan communities and stuff. Walk us through the environmental crimes section, and how, because not all precincts have it, or not all constables' offices have this. They're pretty limited. So walk us through how that has developed and how it's really taken a vision in protecting the future people moving here and the people that currently live here. So walk us through that, sir.
Back in, it was probably the middle 2000s, so 2009, 2010, I wrote a grant to begin the environmental program. So it started at the sheriff's office, and it was under my command. And the primary focus of the environmental program is to deal with illegal dumpings and public nuisances. In this past year, it's kind of expanded a whole lot. And we ended up we had a complaint regarding odors, smoke, filling a shallow valley. And so the role of the environmental investigations was headed up in my office by Detective Dana Ames. And basically, with the complaint, we went out there and she initiated an investigation of it. She walked out there and she saw smoldering piles. I say smoldering, not on fire. I'm talking like just smoking. There was no fire to them. There was nothing. So she said, according to what it was explained to us, it was just the chemicals basically had been sitting, and they started smoking, and it had gradually filled up the valley down below. Our victims lived down inclined from them. And so we initiated. I mean, they started having health issues and problems of that nature. So we just dug into it. And what we found over time is that in taking samples, that we had a significant problem with PFOS and PFOS.
This is being, and I think there's still a lot of this is still in its infancy. This investigation is still going on. It's probably sounds like a long way from being concluded, but
Sure.
it sounds the way I understand it, it rose to the level to where it was like, hey, there's a potential significant risk to the health of the community here. So yes, this investigation is not completed yet, but we have hit this Rubicon moment to where we have to make the public aware of what's
Absolutely.
going on. Is that kind of how that transpired?
Yes. Here a couple of weeks ago, we ended up having after meeting with all the officials in Johnson County, as far as the commissioners, the judge, and we finally had testing come back. I mean, running things to a lab takes sometimes an exorbitant amount of time, but we ended up getting that information all together. And then from there, we all met and we decided that we need to release this to the public, that it was significant enough that that public safety was at risk. So we had a meeting. We've had several meetings, and people want to tune in and hear if they listen to the show that was this morning.
That's 9 a.m. It's a Joko Vibes show this morning. If you want to hear in-depth detail with the scientists and stuff like that, it's replayed on the Joko Community Facebook page.
Yes. So it's just something that's not anywhere near ending. It's definitely nowhere near over, because I mean, we anticipate that there's a very strong potential of more victims and more people. And essentially, we've taken in biosolids out of Worth, and they've been used as fertilizer, and the fertilizer is it's just not safe.
And just to make this clear to everybody, because I hear all the time, I said, hey, we've been using, this is human waste. This has been done for years. It's been spread around. This is not a human waste problem.
No, it's not.
Yeah, and this is what a lot of people need to understand about this investigation and where this is going. Think of everything in a large city that goes down drains. Everything that goes down drains, from hospitals, from businesses, from your house, just from how you clean your house, from everything in a city goes down the same pipes, basically.
Yes.
And it's the chemicals and how those are treated and processed. They're getting intermingled with human waste, and it's a chemical issue. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's absolutely correct. It's not. I've heard people say, oh, there's nothing wrong with this stuff. It's organic. We're not talking about the organic things that are the problem. It's the man-made chemicals that are found in different products that we use, from tape to firefighting foam to makeup. I mean, it's PFAS is in a number of things that we use, and it's just harmful to you. I mean, it can cause various types of cancer and health issues, and our victims have suffered some of that. Cattle dying off, and just in the one meeting that we had at the commissioner's court that day, I mean, I had probably 4 different people, between phone calls and talking to them right after the meeting, talking about how their livestock's been having issue with stillborn calves, or calves dying, or cows dying, or cleft palate. And them are all just telltale signs of a potential. But until you test, you don't know exactly what you're dealing with. I mean, there's calves that are born stillborn. It happens. But this is different, and people just need to be cognizant. We don't need to dismiss this as a no issue. I asked her today. Somebody said, "Well, you can burn the PFAS out of it when it goes to the treatment plant. They heat it, and they said they heat it at 1,000 degrees." And I wanted to know, so I asked the scientist this morning. She says, "Absolutely not."
So
maybe 2,000 would start to affect it, and then there's still going to be some left. You're not going to get rid of it.
Well, whatever it is, and I mean,
yes, sir.
the reality is that this problem ain't going away.
No,
it's
sir.
going to expand. It's going to get larger.
Yes, sir.
So people just kind of need to be aware of it, and really watch it, and hopefully they can come up with a solution to create a safe. I mean, the bottom line is everyone's going to have. I mean, the cities create waste. And so this stuff's going to have to be dealt with one way or another, and hopefully they can come up with a safer way to manage it for the community, and hopefully they can come up with a safer way to mitigate what the damage that's already been done.
Yes.
And
time for everybody to get together and find a solution.
Sure, but you deserve credit for for having foresight to think about environmental issues in an area that was going to be, populated over time.
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
there's people that haven't, that are going to be moving here over the next few years owe you a debt of thanks for, being able to foresee something like this and lean ahead on it. So thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit more, a little about the campaign here. Um, I'm a veteran. I have 8 deployments, and I've had significant injuries. I've been shot 4 times in my legs, and I've had to go through substantial rehab and recovery in that, to be able to become functional again, to join the military again. And you were very humble, and you don't speak a lot about a very significant injury that you incurred, and substantially affected your law enforcement career. And you have rehabilitated and recovered from that and come back stronger than ever. Walk us through your line of duty experience in what happened to you, and please share that with our audience as we wrap down this first segment here, sir.
All right. Well, I mean, back in 2015, I ended up going out on a high water rescue, and you're absolutely right, Greg. It's not something I would have probably ever even talked about, except it was brought out, and I don't want to ever not be transparent and tell people where I'm at or what I'm doing. I mean, but I went out on a high water rescue and ended up going out, and we car had been stopped at a intersection of before high water, before a creek. And the lady, the volunteer firefighter, told the lady, hey, look, please don't cross. Just give it time, and it'll eventually, go down to where you can. I mean, the high water always runs off, maybe not quite as fast as it feels, but and she didn't wait. She ended up trying to cross the bridge and went down, and we were able, as a team, to make it down to her car. We determined that she wasn't there and that she'd been washed out of the car. So the next morning we began the recovery process, and we went down into the creek bed. And during that time I was injured, and I ended up crushing the bones all across the top of my foot. The end of this, I guess the story goes, I went eventually I developed an infection in the bone, and they required them to amputate my leg, below the knee, my right leg. And when it first happened, I mean, I was laying in bed that night, and I'm a Christian. I will never deny that, and I'm proud of it. And I mean, that night, I felt like I had an encounter with God, and He said it was going to be okay. So I trusted that, and they amputated my leg a couple days later. And first, I was thinking, hey, if she'd have just listened to that firefighter, none of this would have happened. But the truth is, it's not a question of what happened then. The question really boils down to, would you do it again? Same thing I'm sure you experienced in your encounters. But and the thing is, the question is, yeah, I would do it again, and I have done it again, and I'll do it again tomorrow. That's what's required of me. There were tough moments as you're going through it. But, I returned to work after a couple of months. I was in a wheelchair initially. I was blessed with great people around me. I mean, I can't speak highly enough about some of the people out there at that sheriff's office during my time there, and how much they meant and how much we stuck together. And I had become better. I mean, God, it wasn't a curse that what happened to me. It was a blessing what happened to me, because it's made me a better person. It's made me more humble. And I was a pretty humble guy to begin with. But like I said, it's not something I probably would have even talked about, because I don't use it as an excuse. Like everybody else, I get up in the morning, I just have one more step. I have to put on a prosthetic leg and get ready. And you just move on with life.
Well, I remember the first time I saw you speak, I did not and was not aware of your injury, and I would have never known.
Right.
I would have never known. I've seen you speak before. I've seen you at some of these forums, and I think probably about a third into the election cycle is when I was made aware of it. And some people question your ability, and I got a lot of friends. Pressure plate IEDs took off a lot of legs in Afghanistan.
Yes, they did.
And they did. And I have a lot, and when you have a significant injury like that, it's career ending in a lot of ways, and you can make the choice to move on into other stuff, but they're definitely 100% recoverable. I have friends in special operations units that have redeployed with below knee amputations.
Yes.
It's not easy. It's not hard. It will instill a level of resiliency in that individual who will go through that, a lot of people fortunately don't have to go through.
Right.
I'm sorry that there has been questions about your ability. I think that is in really bad taste.
Right.
And it is, and I'm proud to know that our local law enforcement agencies here in Johnson County will support somebody who is willing to first make the conscious decision to try to stay serving, and then give them the ability to come back and then put them right back in the front line and then let them lead a department. So thank you for serving our community. Thank you for putting your life as a law enforcement officer in the risk, and thank you for setting an example for people that have injuries and go through a lot, and set an example for how these things are overcomable, especially with your reliance on Christ, which you've made very clear.
Yes.
So as we wind down this show here, we got a couple minutes left. Talk to us about how you're going to finish up the this election cycle. Where can our people, the 5th is the last day to vote. What's your closing sprint towards the finish looking like?
Well, I mean, at this point, I think a lot of people have probably determined where they're going with most of the elections, and now I believe where I'm at is good, and I believe that I've had, like I said, a lot of people have come out and support, and I appreciate that so much. I mean, I'm so humbled by the number of people that have reached out to me, and come Tuesday, we'll be out there, we'll be waving to people and greeting people that want to talk to us. I mean, of course, I guess the end of the dance comes about 7 or 7:30 on Tuesday night, and we'll see what season God has me in. But it will be a season no matter what.
Well, I think they're going to be counting late.
Yes.
I think they're going to be counting late. Johnson County is traditionally a voting an election day vote heavy county, and I look forward to watching this close out.
Well, let me say one more thing about the environmental. One thing that I've heard people say, and you've probably heard it too, this is just a big political organization as far as, use it for my election. But I just want you to know, I said this morning, if we could free those people's land, if we could make it clean, I'd walk out of my office at 5 o'clock today and never go back.
There we go. Thanks. We'll be back with Tim Good for Johnson County District Attorney. Get out and vote.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Welcome back, Johnson County, Texas Transparency Project. I'm your host, Greg Cooper. We are in our second segment. We are closing out the primary election in Johnson County here, and we are here with Timothy Good, running for Johnson County District Attorney. Before we get to him, I want to remind everybody that JoCo Community Radio is proud to be your voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoCo.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch, and the station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at JoCoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Or reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844-TEX-HAIL. That's 844-839-4245. And be sure to dress your arms and more in the Tiffy.com. And as cold, wet, and windy as it's been, you could definitely use some stuff from the Tiffy.com. So welcome, Mr. Good. We're going to get right into it here. We are winding down the primary election.
We are.
We got tomorrow to vote. We got March the 5th is voting day, and then
Tuesday, yes,
that's it. So we're coming off Lone Star Patriot Group's event. That's one of my favorite events that they do. It's a town hall. It really gets a lot more in depth, and there was a little bit of fireworks there.
There were.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with that? You want to give a background? This is your show. This is your 30 minutes to let everybody know where you're at and what you want them to remember you by and take to the polls on the 5th.
So absolutely. I want to talk about, one of the big issues that came up at the Patriots Forum was public corruption. And I think that's a big issue in Johnson County. And then I talked about it there. If you have the phrase Johnson County is fill in the blank, many people in Johnson County say Johnson County is corrupt. I've heard it before I came here. It's been a phrase people have used for decades. Tarrant County thinks that about us, Hood County, Ellis County. It is the reputation that we have. My problem with that is it true or not? That's what we need to figure out. And the problem is that their district attorney's office is not looking into public corruption. So it's hurting both groups of people. For the citizens, their reputation of their county is being hurt, and they don't know, are my elected officials corrupt? I don't know if the elected officials are corrupt. You have to look into cases as evidence arise. Now, for the elected officials, it's hurting them. If you get an accusation against you that you're being corrupt, you're embezzling money, if no one's looking into that, then you have no protection either. You don't get to look back and point to an investigation and say, this came up 2 years ago. It was investigated. The case was closed out. It's done. The rumor was looked into. It's over. Now, Mr. Hannon wants to make it seem like this is just about school board members squabbling about stuff or city councilmen, but we all know, we've all heard the rumors of bigger, grander things.
So we're talking about public corruption, and that requires an investigation.
It does.
And I was at the Lone Star Patriot events. In fact, I asked a question about this. I run a radio show, and I get asked a lot of questions, and I get asked to ask a lot of questions to people like you.
Right.
Mr. Hanna made it very clear, or he said that the district attorney office doesn't investigate.
Exactly. He said what we're talking about. They do not do it. That is the policy of the office. We do not investigate.
So a district attorney who wants to look into this stuff, what can they do? How does a district attorney actually investigate and get involved in that? And what role do they serve?
So So it depends on the way you want to take what Mr. Hanna said, that they don't investigate it. It's not that they can't. The only person who can really investigate public corruption is the DA or law enforcement locally. Now, if law enforcement investigates public corruption, the DA has the prerogative not to take the case. The problem in Johnson County is your district attorney is killing these cases in infancy by saying, either one, we have a policy, do not bring me those cases. And so you've heard of agencies saying, we just don't look into it anymore because we've been told across the board we're not going to have that addressed. It's almost like in Dallas County where they're saying if theft under under $750, it's now legal basically. So I think one of the big problems is the agencies aren't going to investigate. And doesn't that foster an environment where corruption can thrive? If you're being told as an elected official out there that the DA has already said it's hands off, it's Wild West time out there, you can do what you want to do, so we're not going to look into it. The DA's office can. And one way they can is they have their own investigators. DA's office has sworn law enforcement that can look into cases itself. The DA also has the ability to contact the Texas Rangers, which is the best way to do it, and say, we need the Texas Rangers to come down to assist. They specialize in investigating public corruption.
So I hear a lot about the Texas Rangers. Well, Texas Rangers can look into this. Texas Rangers this. Texas Rangers that. Can I, as a citizen, call the Texas Rangers and ask them to investigate something?
You can call, but nothing's going to happen.
So what does it take, and how do the Texas Rangers get involved in investigating, let's say, a city or an elected official or a taxpayer-funded government entity? How does the Texas Rangers get involved and investigate that?
Oh, it's simple. It's simply your district attorney called the Texas Rangers and says, I have a allegation or suspicions of public corruption. I need Rangers assigned to look in this case. And then they're cut loose to do what they need to do. It's that simple. Now, the average citizen can't do that because the state could not function. The Rangers are a limited resource in the state of Texas. You can imagine if anybody could call them in, it would never happen. It's up to your district attorney to be that clearinghouse threshold saying, this has gone beyond rumors and discontentment within the community to there is something there that seems to be systemic long term. We need to look into it.
So is there any, give us an example of something that would the Texas Rangers, and it could be hypothetical, it could be whatever example you want to use. What is something that the Texas Rangers that is a valid reason for a district attorney's office to call the Texas Rangers in?
Okay. Yeah, we won't even use a hypothetical. So we all know what's happening in Godly. I can't think of anything better to say than it's a shit show out there. We don't know what's going on, but the district attorney's office has been fully aware of what's going on out there for at least a year. When I worked there, the policy was no one from the office is allowed to be involved in it except for the district attorney and his first assistant. And we don't know what happened behind closed doors with that. But for Mr. Hanner to say, I don't know anything about there being allegation of public corruption, or I haven't seen any evidence of that, he has been presented with evidence of public corruption. He just chosen not to do anything with it or let the investigation proceed. So Godley's a perfect example. I don't know who's guilty there or if anybody's guilty there. I don't know if the police were in the wrong. I don't know if the city council's in the wrong. Don't know. But that's the big problem. You really need to investigate that because you got to clear that up. Somebody somewhere down in Godley is in the wrong based on all the stuff we're hearing happen. So you got to get to the bottom of it. And I don't know what the advantage is to not investigating that.
Well, and I'm very involved in Godly. I used to live there. I go to a lot of their city council meetings. I'm pretty tapped into Godly, and I'll be the first one to say I don't know what's going on in Godly.
No,
I know it doesn't look right,
right,
and I know it doesn't look right, and that just everything may be okay, everything may not. So we don't know, and it's very fair to say that. But the reality is with this much smoke, you have to clear the air.
You do.
You have to, because you lose trust. Your people are disenfranchised.
Exactly.
People don't want to engage, and that's a problem. And it's a two-pronged thing. If there's nothing going on, but it's not addressed and everything's cleared, people lose faith. People are disenfranchised. In the instance that there might be something going on, that bad behavior is being rewarded.
Exactly.
And is being emboldened.
Yes.
And so could the district attorneys call the Texas Rangers in to look into Godly?
Yeah, it's a simple phone call.
So why do you think that in Johnson County there's this cloud? There is a cloud. Why do you think that it is there? And what can you do if elected?
Right.
Like, how would you navigate that?
Well, the cloud comes from that simple policy, like Mr. Hanna said, which the policy was when I worked there, we do not investigate these cases. So over the decades that he's been in office, where that policy has been in place, it just festers. And that's where that cloud is created. And in that cloud, maybe corruption has popped up because you've invited a vacuum. You say, we're not going to look at that type of crime. So there may be corruption out there, but also like what you and I just talked about, we don't know. So what can a district attorney do? Day one, talk to the Rangers and say, these are some of the hot fires out there that need to be looked at, because the citizens deserve that, and the people who are being accused of it deserve that. They clear the air to figure out what is true and what is not.
And also, another issue that's been brought up is you have been very, very, very adamant about a close working relationship with the frontline law enforcement,
Yes.
and that sometimes that a case is presented that may not be complete, may not be adequate enough, and there can be an education piece from the
Mhm.
district attorney to help them to educate them on what they need to do
Right.
to be better, to be more effective. I mean, they're not lawyers, they're not going to court, they're law enforcement officers, frontline, they're first responders.
But we should be a team, is what you're indicating. We should be
Yeah,
a
so
team.
walk us through because the impression I'm getting is that there's not a lot of feedback from the district attorney's office to local law enforcement
Right,
on how to
right.
make them better and how to streamline this process. Walk us through some of that
Right.
and how you can better serve law enforcement to better protect the public.
Right. So in the forum, Mr. Hanna specifically said to the officers, "You guys don't know how this works. You guys file cases and you get upset because you don't understand how the courtroom works or the rules of evidence." Well, that's a failure of leadership. That's a failure of teamwork. Every officer, they're making the arrest not for the arrest. They're making it because it's for the prosecution. It's to seek justice. If it ends ultimately in the courtroom, that's where it goes. Like you said, they're not attorneys. I'm not a police officer. If we don't get together and work together as a team, I don't understand how what they do and how they do it, and they don't understand what we need in the courtroom. So if you're more involved in the investigative phase, correctly involved, because I want to get into being involved in investigations later and how the DA's office is not correctly involved. But if you're correctly involved in investigations, saying, I'm not here to tell you what case to do or not to do, what to, drop or what to pursue. I'm here to say, if we're on this type of case, this is the type of evidence we're going to need. You're going to need this type of witness, find them. You're going to need to get DNA evidence in this type of case for the guidance for when we get to trial. I already know what I'm going to need. Anybody who helps out law enforcement, if you're there working with them, you can already envision, if you're a good trial attorney, how is this going to play in front of a jury? What's that jury going to say? I wish I had seen that. And in real time, you can say, you need to collect that shirt, or you need to do that. And that would you understand. Also, if there's a problem with a misconception about, can I use this type of testimony or whatever, talk to law enforcement and say, I know you think this is a smoking gun. It's not, because the rules of evidence won't allow it. But that requires teamwork.
Absolutely. And I was in law enforcement and I did investigations, and I did it on a little kind of different level, but I can't imagine bringing case after case after case after case that I am very comfortable in, and having them get shot down and not understanding why, and not that communication. That's huge. I would just kind of shut down a little bit.
Well, you would. I mean, one, you're not going to learn from it.
Nope.
And two, it's almost like someone, trying to think of a good analogy. If someone cooks you dinner every night, but you never eat it, you go, I'm just going to stop putting the effort into it. I may go through the motions because it's my job to do this, but I'm not going to put the gusto in because I'm not being told. I'm working this case, and I'm in law enforcement, bless their hearts. They don't work 9-to-5 jobs. They have horrible situations. They run through fields and have their clothes torn. They get injured. They have long 18-hour manhunts. And in the back of your mind, if you are hearing that voice going, is this case going to go anywhere? That is going to directly affect the work product you're producing, particularly when you're not being told, when the cases that do get back, I busted my butt to get that thing done. Why? Why is it not being accepted? If you can say it's because it's just not a good case because these factors, not your fault. It's just not, the facts don't line up enough for prosecution. At least you know you tried as hard as you could, but it just doesn't meet the criterion. Or if it's because there's a mistake made by the officer, that happens. We make mistakes as attorneys. You can say we can learn from that. Or we should be saying also, as a prosecutor, we made a mistake on the case, whether we lost a hearing because we weren't prepared or whatever. But you need to be clear why cases are not being accepted or they're being rejected.
Well, and make no mistake about it, today's society, law enforcement's under attack by a lot of, and that's sad. And the reality is, it takes a unique individual to run towards gunfire, not run away from it. And we're blessed to have people that are willing to do that.
Correct.
And to not have the support internally, or whether it's perception, whether it's whatever it is, but anything that, like, to go to put everything into something, have the risks of all this scrutiny, have the risks of the danger in losing your family. We just had Constable Troy Fuller on here who lost his leg trying to
Exactly.
trying to
Yeah.
work a problem, and they deserve the best type of training. And Craig Hunley runs a property tax group,
Mhm.
and he helped get Central Appraisal District Board of Directors elected. And one of their biggest things was they're going to reach out and they're going to educate the public on how to navigate this complex tax system. And to
Right.
hear somebody say that they're willing to reach out to law enforcement and help them cross that Rubicon, cross that bridge to bottom line is get to the finish line. That's a great thing. And
Right.
it's really disheartening to hear that there's some problems there.
What's also a two-way street for law enforcement, like the complex cases, when you get those to a DA and you're like, I don't get this, right? The law enforcement who works the complex fraud cases can sit down and say, let me explain to you how all this lines up. Because you give me a stack of papers and I go through it, it's not clicking for me. So I go, oh, it's not going to be a good jury case. You get your investigator in there that does fraud and they say this and this and this, and it just clicks. And you go, this is a fantastic case. It may be complex, but the complex fraud cases, complex crimes, those are where the criminals are winning, right? Everybody says we get the stupid criminals, and that's true. The people who mess up big, but you have all these other people who are very smart and very intelligent, and it's not service level easy stuff like drug cases. Drug cases are easy. Traffic stop, drugs in plain view, done. But the complex fraud cases and things like that, that's where the attorneys need to be meeting with their investigators saying, help educate me. Because when I understand how to do this, I can present it to a jury.
So, so you want to talk a little bit about investigations?
I do.
So before we get to that, for the listeners, so we're talking about this thing about not being supported by the DA, but the local law enforcement. Well, the proof's in the pudding. You've been endorsed by some agents, some organizations
Yes, sir, yeah.
that represent the frontline officers.
Right.
Tell us about those endorsements, why those endorsements are important, and who those organizations represent.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's a lot of times those organizations don't really endorse.
No, it's rare.
It is rare. So so explain those endorsements to us for the listeners.
Yeah. So I've been endorsed by both CLEAT and TMPA. Who are they? They are the voice for law enforcement. They're basically kind of almost law enforcement union / insurance. They help do legislation. They are the big voice out there for law enforcement. Now, they don't typically endorse DA candidates. It just doesn't happen. Now, I can't call up there and say, hey, I'm running for this and blah, and I'm really pro law enforcement when you endorse me. I have no avenue to do that. The best example I have is like TMPA when they called me last week or the week before last. They said, we don't know who you are, but we've had our phones been blown up for week after week after week from multiple officers from different agencies within Johnson County. There sounds like there's a problem. And what that problem is that the officers are not being allowed to speak out openly about how they feel. The sheriff's office has been told by the sheriff, and you go talk to any deputy, anybody in law enforcement, the sheriff's office. He has, and I'm disappointed in him for this. He has told them, you could not endorse Tim Good. I'm endorsing Mr. Hanna. And so you cannot run afoul to my endorsement. And that's wrong. You cannot try to have someone that wants to run around Johnson County and say, all the local politicians are backing me. No one local is backing Tim because he can't get local support. But then you have one of your supporters suppressing the voice of the entire sheriff's office for political advantage. And so they don't have the ability to do that. So what did they do? They had to call their TMPA reps and CLEAT reps and say, we're being told we are going to have retribution, job problems. We've been ordered directly not to do it. We got to find some way to get unofficially an endorsement for Tim Good.
Well, and I'm just a resident of Texas, and I just do a little radio show, and I try to make this available to whoever wants to come on. We had Mr. Han on here, and he was very pleasurable and represented his office very well. But I mean, some of the questions I've asked, like, I'm literally in fear from things I've heard, because of the vibe I'm getting and what I'm hearing and saying, and people like warning me about asking questions. So I can't, I don't know, but it's nerve wracking. It's very, very nerve wracking.
We saw that question asked at the forum where when an officer said, can you just promise us, because most of us are privately trying to support your opposition, can you just tell us that there will not be any blowback consequences? And he didn't.
He didn't address it.
He didn't
It was-
address it.
That should be like, absolutely not. I'm publicly stating that there is no retribution, and I encourage you to exercise your First Amendment rights, is what I would
Exactly.
hope to hear. Anyways, talk about this investigation piece. We do have one question here. Have corruption cases been presented to Mr. Hanner? If so, what was the response? Does the case just go away? That's one big question we keep getting answered here. You answered it a little bit godly, but you want to expand on that?
I'm sure there are more. The problem is I've only got my slice of the pie when I worked there. Is my understanding from talking to different officers during this campaign, there have been a lot of cases presented. And so when they get presented, we're talking about a case that's been put together very well. And so it may not meet the standard beyond a reasonable doubt. So a DA may say, hey, look, we're not going forward. It's not going to be accepted. But across the board, they get rejected because, once again, the office policy is we are not getting involved in public corruption cases. And so it doesn't matter what you bring, unless it's just, I guess we have the example of the commissioner 15 years ago got caught so red-handed, this hand in the cookie jar stealing money, that he had to go to prison. But outside of that, we're not getting involved in that.
So on to investigation, sir.
Right.
So how can the district attorney's office help in investigations? What can they investigate, and how can Johnson County become a safer county and public officials be more accountable with the right DA in the office and what the tools
Let's
at their
use the
disposal?
example of what is being doing wrong. Right, I'm talking about the DA should be involved in investigations because, once again, it's that talking with each other to make sure things work out correctly. But the DA should not be making the investigative decisions. Now, he can make that with his own investigators, with them, but telling individual agencies what you can and can't investigate is a problem. One of the issues we have is that we have all the warrants reviewed by the district attorney's office. That was a great concept 10 years ago because, to be honest, officers are not the best at writing warrants sometimes, and you want to help them. Like they tell you audibly, verbally, this is what I have, but when they try to write it down, it's not well articulated. So you help them with that. So the process is you have to have your warrant approved by the district attorney's office before you give it to a judge, and it saves a judge a lot of time, a lot of headache, a lot of just struggling through a warrant. Currently, that's being used to kill cases or prevent investigations of certain individuals. I personally know that there was a case that I worked with the sheriff's office, and it was a prominent individual in Johnson County. And he's accused of have molested several teenage girls over the course of, I think, about a decade. And during that period of time, we got enough evidence and we got a warrant. And the warrant was presented to a judge and the warrant was signed. And Mr. Hanna then somehow became aware of that, came to that detective, took that warrant and said, this person, you're not going to investigate them. And the warrant, we don't know where the warrant is today. The sheriff knows about that. The sheriff knows that there was a warrant signed and the district attorney has that warrant in his possession. And my understanding is that even the sheriff has been told this particular person is off limits. And for some reason, the sheriff's office is okay with that. And that is not appropriate. We're talking about an investigation. If a judge signs off on a warrant saying there's probable cause for an arrest, and then all of a sudden we kill the case without there being an arrest and saying we're not taking any further action, I don't have an explanation for that.
And we're not saying that this person is guilty. We're not saying this person is not guilty. We're saying that there was enough evidence to meet the criteria to issue an arrest warrant,
Yes.
and then that was stonewalled,
Well,
or that was paused.
what's
What's
I
the
don't know
correct term
that's
for
the
that?
hard part. I don't know the correct term. You have
Okay.
an active live warrant somewhere, if it still exists. That means that the officer under law shall now make an arrest. And then subsequent to that, we tried several other types of search warrants, just to say, okay, if you don't want to do an arrest, we'll do different types of search warrants to try to gather more evidence. And all of those were denied.
And if these were issues where it was like the local law enforcement agency or whatever kind of needed to make sure that it fit within the criteria for a court, and this isn't, we're not talking manipulation of data, obviously, but to make sure that it like an education piece, that doesn't happen either, is what you're saying.
No, it doesn't happen. The other problem is you cannot look at warrants as being, okay, this is not a case I'm going to take right now, because probable cause and beyond a reasonable doubt are two separate things. And a case investigation should not end with an arrest. You need to keep going forward, right? But to get involved when a case is in its infancy or half-baked, or like at least we're to the goal line of arrest can be made, you get 5 witnesses to make credible statements of sexual assault. At that point, you got to take action. You've got a community safety issue at that point as well. So when you're at that point, killing a case makes no sense. Even if it's to say, I don't think we could win this at trial. That's not even a good excuse, because you're saying, I'm going to adjudicate a case, judge, jury, and executioner, when we're back here as the case is just getting started. It doesn't make sense. But the problem is, I think, is because it's a prominent individual in Johnson County. And this has happened before with the Dr. Dang case. If you want to Google Dr. Dang in Cleburne, the exact same thing happened. Dr. Dang was accused by several women of sexual assault while he was a doctor. And if the trial went forward, he got convicted by special prosecutors, not by our DA's office. And those witnesses in that case said they went to the district attorney's office and they were stonewalled. They said they went to the Cleveland Police Department, and people in charge of Cleveland Police Department stonewalled them. And when the case went to trial, they were missing reports that they had filled out, missing witness statements they had filled out. This is what they said in their testimony under oath in that trial. And Dr. Dang was convicted. We're having the same thing play out. So if this is just a mistake that's being made, where this particular individual we were investigating last year, where we got the warrant, you think the district attorney would learn. I was wrong last time, where I thought there's nothing here, when there's multiple allegations from multiple women. I don't know why in this we haven't had a learning curve change going. There's got to be something else involved, because you see multiple allegations, you got to take action. There has to be something we do, and you shouldn't. There needs to be a huge separation. The police work their case. You can hate it. It needs to be filed through office, and then you make the decision. You say, we, district attorney's office, is rejecting it. There's been a lot of gamesmanship, saying, basically pushing it off onto the agencies, making it look like they're being incompetent because they're being told, I don't even want to see that thing crossed into my office.
Well, and Lady Justice is blind.
Yes.
Lady Justice,
Or it's supposed to be.
Everybody look at a statue of Lady Justice. She's wearing a blindfold for a reason. And I mean, I'll play devil's advocate here.
Let's do it.
You're talking about something to where, you know, stuff comes up missing and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Well, there's an electronic records issue in the DA's office because they don't maintain electronic records. It's all paper. Talk us about how that can solve some of these problems. And we're really quick. So what do you want to finish with? You got about 30 seconds left. So take it home.
I mean, I think,
and no, I'm not suicidal, for those that are not, just because props to you for doing this. You're a courageous man, sir.
So yeah, everybody can see electronic stuff on my website. My big thing is this good old boy system, this corruption. We need to just get to the bottom of it. We need to figure out what's going on in Johnson County, because the citizens deserve an answer, and we deserve to focus on a bunch of cases more than just drugs.
And hopefully there is nothing going wrong, and hopefully everything is copacetic, but we all deserve answers to those questions. Texas Transparency Project back with you next week. Get out and vote. Tim Good, Johnson County District Attorney. Have a good night.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help to fix my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now